Good morning and welcome to another episode. I am in the Ozarks this morning. Something that I thought might be kind of fun on this episode. There is on my property an old sign that evidently the previous owner at one point in time raised cattle. Now I know when I did some demolition on this place, I found evidence of sheep. There was sheep medicine and horse medicine, a little bit of horse tack I found originally, but the person was a rancher, and I have 5.5 acres here, but there is a large area around that could have been used for ranching. I'm basically on the top of a ridge or near the top of a ridge. There is a larger area, and I think that this 5.5 acre parcel was just a small part of what was at one time something much larger. I found a sign that advertised cattle, and it's not really very specific. It's old, it's beat up, but there is evidence of there being cattle here. It's a metal sign. I think what I'm going to try to do is to straighten it. It's pretty doggone bent up. It was actually on a steel post originally, but then it hung out near the road, and it probably hung out near the road well before there was even asphalt out there, maybe before it was even a state highway. But it's not super old, like it's over 100 years old or something like that. But what I want to try to do is maybe straighten that sign. I won't probably try to restore it. It's pretty rusty, but you can still make out some of the letters on it. And I'll probably hang it up high below my 3 windows there, centered, just to give this place a little bit of history. So stick around and we'll look into that. Well, that address, just like anywhere in the United States, is based on the location of the driveway that accesses the property. And this wasn't the original driveway. We'll go take a look at that. Okay, as we walk down the highway here, there's actually a culvert here that you can't see in a driveway over the top of the culvert that was probably used as the original entrance to this property, and this address would have been 10492. Let's walk in. And this was maybe made up to be something attractive at one point. There's yucca plants here, there's an asparagus plant there. But here's the old frame that once held up the sign that said that this was a cattle operation. I removed the sign yesterday, and we'll go take a look at that next. Just for perspective, there is my spring house, and you can barely see the new building back behind that. Okay, this is what I saw that was attached to that signpost that I just showed you. And it obviously says beef cattle, and then there are the letters RDS. And I was wondering maybe if that originally said Herefords, but evidently that's not the case. I really didn't know the size of this sign since it's been damaged and torn in two. But the one thing that I did this morning is to look at the back side of it to see if there's printing on that, and there is, and it's actually a lot clearer as to what size the sign may have been and what it actually said. Let's take a look at that next. Okay, so when we take a look at this side, it is obvious what it said. It said America's Best Herds. And the sign is mostly a vertical sign. probably about 3 feet wide by 4 feet high. I'll go ahead and pull the brackets off of it and then try to do some straightening, and I think this will look just pretty darn cool hung below those windows up there. Make a really nice historic addition to my property. All right, I've got all of the brackets that were used to attach it to that signpost. I've got them cut off, and I've tried doing a little bit of straightening. This is, I don't know, maybe something between 20 and 24 gauge steel. And at least the big folds, I'm not able to do anything at all by hand. So I am going to have to wait for my son to finish up with my tractor and get my tractor back here, and then figure out something. I'll have to get a little bit creative to hold the major part of the sign down and be able to unfold that large part there, and hopefully do it without damaging it or breaking it off. I think that it's a gentle enough bend that I can probably do that. And then at some point, I think what I'll do is sandwich it between a couple pieces of plywood and then drive back and forth over it to try to get out this fold in the center here. Anyway, it's not going to happen today. May not happen for a week or two, but I'll get back to you when I've got the equipment to do it. All right, I'm back at it. I did hook this portion under the bucket of the backhoe, held it in place while I tried to straighten up the rest of it. And I actually got, I guess it was over here that I held down, this major bend that was in it. I got that taken out. I got a crack opening up there, and it's probably not as strong as what it was, so I don't think that I'll try to do too awful much more with it. I've got it somewhat flattened now, but I'll go ahead and use a hammer to try to take some of these bent edges and flatten them down. Okay, we look at this side of the sign, which is far more legible than the other side, and we see America's Best Her, which I guess could mean that it was a brothel. I think what I will do is, even though the other side is not nearly as legible because it's seen more weather, at least we know we're talking about cattle, and this was an old cattle ranch, an old ranch that had cattle, sheep, and horses at one time. Let's take a look at the other side. Okay, here we see beef cattle herds. We don't know from looking at this side that said herds, but at least we know from this side that this was at one time a ranch. So this is the side I'm going to go ahead and display, and we'll go over and take a look at the barn and see where I'm going to put it. I think this is probably about as good as I'm going to get it so far as straightening. I was thinking at one time about maybe making some sort of framework that has it hanging out from the edge to where you can read both sides, having it perpendicular to the building, but I think because these edges are so torn up that would not work. The wind would just end up tearing it up and making an awful lot of noise. So I think what I'll do is try to create some sort of framework for it up on the side of the barn, and then just have this side displaying. And I will have it centered on what would be the center of the sign, and of course some of it's missing, so most of the sign is going to be a little bit off to the right. All right, well, this is where I recovered that sign, and I recovered it from the top half of this signpost, but I decided to go ahead and tear out or dig out a bunch of weeds and cut down a bunch of branches to have access to the rest of it. So this is the side of the sign that I did not see because it was leaned up against that fence and against that tree. Evidently, this was originally, well, let's take a look at it from the other side. All right, so the lower half of this sign says Devil's Den Hereford Ranch. The phone number, it was evidently put up for sale at some point. The arrow pointed toward what was the original driveway, just to my left. And now the new building is back there, and the wet spring house and such. I'm right along the highway. And it has a 7-digit phone number, so it's evidently, this is pretty old sign, but it was while there was telephone service, so I don't know what kind of date. I may have to do some more research, but it says that this was Devil's Den Hereford Ranch. Now, 5 acres, 6 acres isn't enough to do much ranching on with cattle, so I suspect that this actually encompassed several of the other adjacent properties to me, and maybe was part of the original homestead that happened sometime prior to the Civil War. Now, off in that direction we can't see it, but there is about 7 acres of pasture land behind these trees on a neighboring property. And then if we were to go in this direction quite some distance, so say maybe several hundred feet, maybe several hundred yards actually, we would actually see some larger pasture areas. So this evidently was probably the original homestead to this Hereford Ranch. I don't know how well you can see it, but I've created sort of a frame. And because that sign is broken, the left portion of the frame won't be filled, but it will make it look at least like there was possibly a full sign there at one time. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm ready to hang the sign. But in the meantime, I am just about to pull a pizza out of my wood-fired grill. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. All right, here we go. I can tell already I'm going to be enjoying this. Just a little bit of burnt cheese on the edges. I love it just like this. A smoked flavor. Oh my goodness, is this going to be good. Be back after I eat. Okay, I have it hanging loosely from a nail. I'll go ahead and get it leveled up and put a few screws in it. We'll take a look at it when it's all screwed in. Well, there it is. The sign is up. It is complete. The pizza was delicious. I'll end the episode here. Thank you for being with me. I think tomorrow I'll be back to making more siding. See you then.